I've flown teams out and sat down with the agency in an office and had a strategic planning session, got to know them, really mapped out some goals and a plan, did a QBR live, and really fostering that team because they really are part of that. And you have to put in the time. Like they're not going to be able to do things in a vacuum and that you want, or you're not going to be happy.
This is You Should Talk To, a podcast for busy marketing leaders who are looking for support and tips on getting shit done. In each episode, Daniel Weiner interviews marketing leaders and discusses their experience, successes, and failures around hiring agencies. If you're interested in finding and choosing the right agency partner, then let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the You Should Talk To podcast. I am Daniel Weiner, and this podcast is still brought to you by You Should Talk To till we find a sponsor. Maybe after today with our wonderful guest. You Should Talk To pairs brands and marketers for free with vetted agencies and or freelancers for marketing and tech needs. Why? Because finding a good agency is a pain in the ass. Super excited to be joined today by Jodi Lebow, Director, Global Demand Center at Hexagon. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us.
So excited to be here and talking to you today.
It only took us how many reschedules with your ridiculous amount of meeting schedules? I think 4. You're lucky I like you. You know, I played a lot of calendar Jenga to make this happen. So I appreciate you talking on a Friday especially. Tell us a little bit about how you got here. Give us the cliff notes. You've had some really interesting experience, especially working with some global companies. Tell us a little bit about your background and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, when I think about it, I'd like to be able to tell you that it was all masterfully architected on my part. But I think there's been really a great bit of serendipity that's led me through a bunch of wonderful experiences in my career. I think I've also been a part of a lot of high growth organizations that have had a lot of M&A, and that always provides a lot of opportunities for growth, along with a lot of lessons about integration. And, you know, it's really helped me to continue to be more agile and open to what comes my way. So yeah, I've had some great roles across digital marketing and demand gen, both small and large tech companies, and it just kind of keeps unfolding from there.
Awesome. Tell us what Hexagon does, because I don't think I could describe it in one sentence either. So I'll leave it to the experts internally.
Yeah. Well, you know, Hexagon's a global leader in digital reality solutions, combining sensors, software, and hardware, and a lot of autonomous technologies. We really kind of put data to work across a lot of industrial and manufacturing and infrastructure industries. So really doing some very cool and innovative work. And the company has over 22,000 employees in 50 countries. So big team.
That's incredible. What's it like working in such a large organization?
It's great. I think, you know, I mean, I'm within one, a specific kind of business unit division. And so it feels like, you know, your family within the family, but then there is a lot of cross collaboration, especially from a marketing standpoint. We've been collaborating across all the divisions, and really we just launched a new hexagon.com.
Yesterday, right?
Yeah, just this week. And so, you know, bringing together all of that story to be more customer centric, to present one Hexagon. So they don't need to know our internal setups and what divisions sell what products, right? How do we help our customers explore everything Hexagon can do for them? So,
did you lead the new website project?
I did not. I let my team lead it from our division, but it was coordinated by our core kind of central marketing team that works across all the divisions.
Relatively seamless process.
Yeah, it was. Any website redesign, especially when you're bringing together multiple, websites that had to collapse into it. But it's been a long road, but really excited about what we can build from here.
Sure. I know you guys work with a ton of different agencies for various things. What's your overall, not even just at Hexagon, but just in your career, like what's your overall opinion of agencies? They get, at least in my world, you know, I've been at an agency, now I work in between agency and brand. Agencies get a bad rep sometimes, like overall, and all get lumped in together. How do you feel about, you know, your past agency experiences?
Yeah. Well, and actually started my corporate career right out of college at a large agency as a TV and radio media buyer. So, I have that in my pocket as well. But no, I think, with agencies, I think that for me, it's one size doesn't fit all. There's so many types of agencies and different approaches that you can't just lump them. And I think that agencies can provide a lot of best practices and expertise, that you might not be able to build up fully internally. And they can also be great for kind of staff augmentation when we can't build up the size teams internally it might take to do a lot of things. So I think there's real value. I think, just like anything though, you have to kind of maybe weed through some things to find those really good nuggets of those teams and those agencies that are the right fit.
Sure. Do you think you have a unique perspective coming from an agency in terms of like maybe, commiserating with the struggles of agencies? I always found my favorite clients, at least because not necessarily because they were easy, I actually posted recently like the best clients I've ever had are tough but fair and all that sort of stuff. But I find clients over time who had started an agency and gone to brand, like kind of were in our corner a little bit more. Do you think you have that kind of perspective with that experience?
I think I do. I think I understand, sometimes the position that people in an agency are in and having to manage maybe multiple accounts and work on different things. And for me, one of the reasons I even looked to move from an agency to brand was that impact, right? That feeling connected to what I was working on. And, it was like I was doing all these things, but I wasn't ever feeling like I saw the value and the outcomes. And, I wanted to be more a part of that. And so, how do I bring that to some of my agency partners to really connect them to what we're trying to drive and the success? So, it is not so much a disconnected experience.
Sure. What sort of nuance are you dealing with, agency or beyond working at a global company? You've got different units in different countries. You're traveling the world as far as I know. Talk me through that. What's the difference, like when you're evaluating partners and even thinking through like who to work with for what regions and stuff like that, working at a global company like that?
I think it's a challenge. I want us to be able to have a consistent global approach to our strategy, but recognizing that we have to tailor for different markets for different needs. And sometimes that's just a matter of, okay, how do we translate content or creative or make small tweaks? But then in other places, it really requires different channels or tactics or knowing the local market and vendors that people that we're trying to target actually use, right? And we all understand in some countries, it's not all about Google and there's other search engines that people look to or other social networks. And, how do you tap into that real kind of insights? And can your agency partners truly support you globally in those different areas if they don't have feet on the street and local teams? And it's been a challenge because I don't necessarily want to pop up different agency partners in all those markets, but I think in some maybe you have to. And I think, my experience getting to travel out into some of our regions and engage, it just helps me really reinforce that. It builds collaboration with our teams and understanding that we get what happens outside the US and that we understand those nuances. And so I think it makes it stronger than when we come back and our team is interfacing with our agency partners and we can kind of represent those needs of our local regions.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever an agency tells me that I'm vetting, if I ask if they're global and they say, yeah, the question is usually like, are you actually global or do you just have like a WeWork in one of these places? And usually I get sometimes a sense of shock, like, oh, yeah, like we are. I'm like, I don't know if you guys are actually a global agency. I'm like, I don't know if that necessarily qualifies. Yeah. Do you think when I travel, I kind of hate it about myself now. Like I notice myself looking at like the different ads and things I see in different countries and even different states. But do you think like since you do travel to these markets, do you think it has made you kind of invaluable experience in terms of like understanding culturally when you go to these places to make you a better marketer?
I think, I'd like to think so. I probably still have a long way to go, right? I think, that business culture is different in every country. And even our target market, my division really focuses on a lot of industrial facilities. We're talking power, chemical, oil and gas. And, those are industries that are very different than what I do working in technology and software. So there's also just understanding those personas and thinking about people that work in plants day to day and things. And like, that's very different. So how do I get inside the buyer and that mindset of, like you said, what resonates with them and where they're looking for ads? And that can be different too. So I think whether it's, specific to countries and localization or just, when you're targeting an audience that's very different than your own experience, how can you build up those insights and try to get in their heads a bit?
Sure. I'm gonna try not to trigger you on this next portion. I whenever I talk to folks like you, it seems the consensus is folks with your title or anybody leading marketing at any organization theoretically, but especially big or perceived big global companies are getting hit up by vendors 100 times a day, LinkedIn messages, email, phone calls, the whole shebang. Is that your experience as well? A constant stream of inbound stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it is. I think it's reality for the time. Sometimes you're like, where did they get my cell phone number? Why are they calling me? And, emails, it's hard. I feel because we, have SDRs and people that are trying to outbound as well. And so I try to understand these people that are reaching out to me, but you see everything, right? You see very personalized, tailored outreach where they clearly might actually know who I am and what's something about like me versus other things
Sure.
you see that are just like blatantly bad and like off course. And you're like, what is this?
Is there anything somebody can do to stand out in a cold scenario if you have no, understanding of who they are, have never heard of the company name or anything like that as an agency or a vendor?
I think it's hard. I think sometimes it's just timing and it's sort of like cutting through the noise because, obviously I don't truly read every single full email or thing in my LinkedIn inbox. But I think, if there's something that sparks where I can quickly see something pops out, again, where it resonates, if it's the right kind of topic or, but often it has to be coming from timing, right? Like I have to possibly be having a need, whether it's fully baked or kind of early on where I'm kind of more open to those messages and, oh, well, what is that? Right. But other times I'm full heads down and what we're currently working on. And I'm just like, delete. I don't, honestly. So
I tell everybody this is their chance to offer up what you want as like a really expensive gift. If somebody really wants to stand out, if wine's your thing, send you, here's your chance to plug, what sort of case of wine you want, all that sort of stuff. When you do need to outsource or need to look for a new vendor or agency, where are you typically starting the search? I interviewed Kathleen Booth, who's now head of community at Pavilion, actually, few weeks ago, and we launched the episode yesterday, but her whole thing lately has been community is the new Google and no one's really starting on Google. Is that your experience? Like, where are you starting that process typically, other than working with me, of course, which you always do now for sure?
I will. I know. Well, I think it's a mix, right? I mean, I think first I dig deep, back to my past engagements, right? Who are people that I've had success working with? And, there's a few kind of partners and agencies now I've worked with at more than 3 companies, right? So you kind of go back to that, to have I worked with someone who does this before? But then, otherwise I do think it's my network, right? You reach out to trusted contacts for a referral or ideas because there's just it's like I'm helping you weed down, the universe. And obviously, if someone's had a positive experience, that's just going to be a quicker plus to us wanting to talk to them. So I agree. It doesn't start with search. I mean, I think you kind of reach out to people first. And then if you're like, okay, let me look up this very specific kind of thing I need. But yeah, there's so many out there. How do you start there?
Yeah. In general, what are you typically looking for and like what's super important to you? The constant debate around agency stuff that I have with folks is like my somewhat hot take is the work doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is, of course, the work matters, but you don't get to do the work if you don't nail the relationship side and just like everything pre that of being a helpful resource. So how do you kind of look at that when you're looking for an agency or vendor? What are you kind of like, focused in on? Is it capability? Is it all of it?
Yeah, I think largely I don't want the jack of all trades, master of none, right? I really appreciate vendors that are a fit for a specific, need we have. And also those that are willing to start with that and not try to sell me on all the things, right? Like it's great to know you have capabilities that extend past what I'm here to talk about. But how about we focus and talk about nailing that? And then, we'd be very open to considering more. But I think, it's looking for those agencies that, I feel like a fit that I could see as an extension of my team that can move at my speed and hear me during that evaluation process and what we're looking for and can really hone in on that. Because the worst thing is, I think, to spend time trying to articulate a challenge or need or what we're looking for, and then have them sort of just still come with some generic pitch deck and, try to talk about what they want to talk about. So those that actually can customize and dig in and try to understand what we're looking to do.
Yeah, I have those conversations a lot where I joke like agencies just can't help themselves sometimes. My opinion is they're like, should we tell them all of the, capability? I'm like, just focus on this. Like also, you don't do all those things the best at like you do this one thing. Focus on that and like go from there, do a really good job. Like they just cannot stop themselves from selling sometimes, which sucks. I hate it as well. And I'm the one sending them to folks like you. So definitely a common thread there. I'm curious, since COVID, I've seen like, you just talked about it a little bit, like moving to smaller specialized agencies. Do you care about the size of an agency for a global company like yourselves? Does it make you nervous to work with a smaller shop, or it doesn't really matter? I've seen it not matter nearly as much pre-COVID, especially now. Like after COVID, it kind of democratized, and
Yeah.
people, I think, now more than ever see that there's talent everywhere at a lot of places, not just bigger shops. Do you care about like the optics around the agency necessarily?
No, I mean, and I think, like you said, it's similar to us hiring our own staff, right? Like the COVID changed that. Like you said, the talent is everywhere. We don't just hire where we have a headquarters or an office. I'm home based, office. You look for the good people. And same thing with agencies. I don't think you centralize for centralization's sake. What does that bring you? And you almost put too many eggs in a basket. And we're not that type, even though we're a large organization, that isn't our vibe, right? We are fast paced and moving and want those experts in different areas. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think, we go for, doesn't matter about size, it's capabilities and what's going to really just like mesh with our team.
Yeah, makes total sense. This is the portion where we gossip a little about agencies. So I always preface with we're not here to name agencies because we don't do that here. But for the more positive side, can you think of a really wonderful agency experience either at Hexagon or any time over the course of your career? And if so, what made it such a great experience?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've definitely had some great experiences. I mean, you have the good and the bad, but I think
we'll get to the bad. We'll spend plenty of time on the bad after this.
Yeah. No, but when you think about the good, I mean, I think it's where we've truly had that alignment on strategy and, what we're trying to accomplish. And we've had a really good fit of the team. Ultimately, you're not actually hiring the agency, you're hiring the team that's working your account. And can be really hard because a lot of agencies do have turnover and move things around. And it's really hard because when you find a good team and the people on your account and they actually learn about your company and they learn all the things and they're adding value and it's working, like that's the magic. And when they're rotating and ripping people off and you're having to start all over and trying to educate and bring people up to speed or you get people you don't vibe with, it kind of like breaks down everything. So, I think just staying centered on success metrics and really just knowing the onus is on us to have that same successful relationship, right? We have to share, we have to enable them to help them help us. So.
Yeah, you hit a really important point that I'm typically advising that I find truthfully not because I don't know, I guess just people in your role don't think of it sometimes or think they can. To your point, you're not hiring presumably the 3 people on the phone. You're hiring a team that you haven't even met yet. And I 99% of the time am recommending if you're having a good experience pre-sale and agency, ask to talk to who's going to be leading your account. Ask to talk to people executing. They're probably going to say something like, oh, they're actually working right now, but set up some time to do it for 15 minutes just to see if you mesh because you're usually done with the people that you're talking to about the actual scope once you actually engage. And the biggest pain point I hear more so from bigger agencies is, our team rolled over 10 times or our account person left. We've got 3 account people in 6 months and we don't mesh well with this new person and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious on my comment about the work. I know the work can't suck. I don't take that opinion, but if you had to pick, is it more making your life easier or is it world-class work? Because the more consistent answer is I would rather, from folks like you, I'd rather mediocre work if it makes our lives easier and we can do it quick. Quick is always the thing. We need to move quick. We need to be flexible and we need to have non-bad work, essentially.
I agree. I do. Right. I mean, you want great work, but at what end? I mean, we need to move fast. We need to get things in market. We need to make my team's life easier. And when it becomes a hassle and takes more work out of us to try to manage the agency and the work, it's not adding value. We could probably do it ourselves better. Right. So, I hate to say mediocre, but you can, but no. Yeah.
Yeah, it often, paralysis by analysis. If you try to have perfect, you'll never put stuff into market. No. So you usually learn more from doing it quick and messing it up from my experience.
Yeah.
On the flip side, some negative experiences and what made them negative from an agency standpoint.
Yeah. I've seen things go south and I think sometimes it has to do with both sides. It's never rarely just a one-sided thing, right? Probably similar to relationships, right? But I think when I look sometimes at when things haven't gone right, maybe our team wasn't as organized as we could have been and bringing specific goals to the table and helping not just direct them on an execution, but really sharing what we're trying to do and letting them kind of help us bake the plan. But, a couple of the things I could really come to mind are things we talked about too on the agency side, where they've had that account turnover, things got lost in transition. There's, things fall apart. They can't move at the speed that we need to. And, or also making us feel like transactional, like we're just another kind of client and that, these things. And I want to feel like a bit of a strategic account. Like we're here to do something cool. And you're not just here to manage media or deploy ads for us, right? It's like, that's not what I'm looking for. So.
You want them to at least fake excitement on your account when they're talking to you. Yeah. Do you think once a situation like that has gone south, that it is salvageable?
It probably depends on how early you identify the issue and try to course correct. The ones that have gone that way, I think communication is critical to try to be very upfront and transparent about the issues and try to work through them. And sometimes I've seen, some staffing changes or changes in process, but ultimately I think sometimes it is too late. And often the tough part is just realizing okay, this isn't working. And how do you part ways gracefully? And how do you try to do that without disruption to the business? Yeah. It can be rough.
From my experience, I joke, you get 1.5 chances. What I mean by that is you get one big thing happening and one small thing happening. Yeah. That's your 1.5 chances. And if you don't hopefully they don't happen the same day, because that's probably not bad. And yeah, it's interesting. Do you want the mistake to happen early, where it's somewhat expected, or do you want it down the road? I don't know. That none of it is good, but yeah, it's typically how agencies react, I think, in terms of making it right that leads to retention.
Yeah.
For the positive stuff, I presume even based on scheduling this, you have a million calls, you're traveling internationally, all that sort of stuff. And from my experience working at an agency, our success and our output was usually directly correlated with the input and the time spent with the client, within reason, of course. How do you balance that truthfully? And how do you get the best out of your agency partners, in terms of collaboration, all of that stuff, knowing that there's only 24 hours in a day?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. It has to be collaborative, right? That it's never going to work. And like I said, it's bringing them in early. And, often in some of the, those best examples that I can think of that you referenced, it's been in person. I've flown teams out and sat down with the agency in an office and had a strategic planning session, got to know them, really mapped out some goals and a plan, did a QBR live, and really fostering that team, because they really are part of that. And you have to put in the time. They're not going to be able to do things in a vacuum and that you want, or you're not going to be happy. So, I think you have to have that time to share and review, and, also to know, we aren't always the channel experts, and we want people to push us. We want to try new things, and I expect them to bring that to the table. And how can they do that if we're not, sharing and collaborating? And so you got to make the time.
That fine line of bringing you new ideas, but not always trying to sell you something. Something we always talked about in my old agency. And it was basically the line we drew was we want to always be bringing stuff. We just don't want a dollar amount to be associated with everything that we're bringing. Yeah. So it's tough. What are you most bullish on with everything going on in marketing these days? We've got, I don't even know if it applies in this scenario, but metaverse and Web3 and all of that stuff. We've got events coming back, or they are back, I presume. What are you most excited about as it pertains to Hexagon, or just in general?
Yeah, when I think even just back over the 20 plus years that I've been in digital and demand gen, and, I think the evolution of the technology, right? The way we're going with more personalization and with targeting and with account-based strategies, and it just keeps evolving. And so staying on top of that and leveraging that, I think as a marketer, we're able to be much more efficient and much more successful. Like we talked about, my audience, my targets are very, very defined and specific. I'm not selling, bringing Hexagon solutions to every small mom and pop or, accounting firm out there. So, to think about when I am creating, messaging or media, to be able to know that I can tailor that and actually reach and be more efficient with my dollars of getting to just the right people. And I think there's more and more of that tech that's helping us do that. So that's really what I think is going to continue to move things forward.
Do you have a particularly favorite technology that you're excited about? Maybe I can get them to sponsor. Maybe if we shout them out here, they'll be a sponsor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we work with a lot of different marketing technologies. And
What makes your life the most easy, I should
yeah. Well, I think a couple of the cornerstones. I mean, we work with demand-based from an account-based marketing perspective. We work with Uberflip on creating awesome content experiences and personalizing and starting to, how we piece all these things together, putting in Drift for conversational chat and you kind of bake an ecosystem and you put together a tech stack to try to like have those relevant interactions. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun bringing some of those into the fold here at Hexagon.
Do you know off the top of your head how many pieces make up your tech stack?
It's a lot. No.
Over 100, you think? In terms of
no,
even small things or?
Yeah. I mean, if you went, no, the core, there's probably, under 20 of like the core MarTech stuff that's really driving.
Gotcha. The final marketing focus question, what keeps you up at night from a marketing or just business or career standpoint?
Trying to do it all. There's so many priorities of being part of a growing organization.
I feel that on a deep personal level.
I know. I'm sure you do. Growing and starting your own, right? But I mean, I just think of all the things that my team and myself are trying to do. And it's that balance of not just the like activity focus and doing, but are we doing the things that are going to move the needle? And how do I clear some of the noise to allow us to focus on those big priorities and get everyone on board with those same priorities? Because, we've got other stakeholders and teams who want to do this project and we're there to work with them and support them. Yet I'm like, is that taking us away from, some of these big core things we're trying to drive? So it's just, bringing that all into focus and not burning out. So.
I hope you don't burn out and I hope you're actually able to sleep at night. I do a couple times.
I sleep well until 3 a.m. and then there's that, oh my gosh, wake up, everything's going through my head.
I actually do that. It's so unhealthy. I'll wake up with like an idea or something and get out of bed sometimes. I hate myself for it and write it down so I don't forget it. Do you actually do that?
I don't get out of bed. I don't, which I probably should, because sometimes it's 2 hours and still laying there and I can shut it back down. And then, you go back to sleep and the alarm goes off. So.
That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that doesn't happen. Get some sleep this weekend. The final few questions, nothing to do with marketing. What was your very, very, well, maybe marketing, but what was your very, very, very first job, even growing up?
Yes, babysitting. I did a lot of babysitting for lots of kids and back in Minnesota and in my neighborhood. And then came a few fun, interesting retail jobs at the local mall. And so, yeah.
Do tell. Were you an Abercrombie salesperson?
Bath and Body Works, selling soaps and lotions, Victoria's Secret, and Crate and Barrel, I think, briefly. So, yeah.
Wow, you've got the full gamut. Do you think any of those jobs prepared you for what you're doing today or gave you, better experience for it?
No, but maybe realized I didn't want to, that wasn't the path I wanted to stay in forever. So
I worked at a restaurant. It was my first, I worked illegally at a car wash. My first legal job was working at a restaurant. And I feel like that truthfully did just like, in terms of patience, of not being pissed off at anybody who acts a certain way. What would be your death row meal?
Well, that's very dark. So
super dark.
What's my big celebration?
If you had to have one meal for your final meal, maybe you're not on death row. You could pick one meal, maybe just tonight. You don't even have to have committed a crime. I'll reframe this for the next podcast then.
So many good things, but probably a really good steak with some red wine and a side of French fries.
What kind of steak? I'm a ribeye person.
Ribeye or filet. I go back and forth, sort of.
Okay. And then the final question, who is somebody who inspires you?
Probably my brother. I have a brother with special needs. And, I think he's taught me a lot in life about not taking things for granted, making the most of every day, and with that, the importance of family and sort of loving unconditionally. So I think he keeps me going.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. That was a wonderful conversation. What's the best way, not from a selling standpoint, if somebody really wanted to find you and not send you a sales pitch? LinkedIn, I presume?
LinkedIn is great. Yes.
Awesome. We'll put that. I always joke if anybody's mean to me, I'm going to flash their cell phone on the screen. So we won't do that here. But no, thank you so much for joining. This was awesome. And I'm excited to see the continued success of not only your career, but Hexagon and all that stuff. And I just like hearing that you're traveling globally every 12 seconds and being jealous of it.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad we could connect.
Talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you for checking out this episode of You Should Talk To. This show is brought to you by the company with the same name, You Should Talk To, a company that helps marketing leaders find the right agency or freelancer for their situation. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow You Should Talk To wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit youshouldtalkto.com for more information.